Welcome to the Dean Bleckman Show, live from Long Island. Free-flowing talk with a charismatic, down-to-earth host. Join Dean as he interviews and chats freely with his guests, ranging from superstar athletes to politicians, industry titans, and everyday folk with fascinating life stories. Dean educates, entertains, and most of all, touches people's lives. You're listening to the Dean Bleckman Show, live from Long Island.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dean Bleckman Show. Here in the studio is Scott Morrell, senior correspondent. Going across the Atlantic is the lovely, fantastic senior correspondent, Rhea Bowe. Rhea, how are you today?
I'm very good. Hi, guys. Hi, lovely listeners. Thank you for joining us. And it's all good here. And the UK is not quite as cold as what it was, but it's more autumny than wintry at the moment in the UK. But today we're going to be talking about globalism v nationalism. Kind of dull, but kind of on topic and definitely has an effect on our everyday lives. And we are going to try and find an understanding for us to understand, and maybe you guys, of what it all means. What does it all mean? So that's the basis of it. It's a 50-50 show. Half of it on globalism versus nationalism, half of it on the news headlines, of which we'll get feedback from the team. But until then, back to you, Dean.
Well, here we are in the studio with senior correspondent Scott Morrell. I know he was very anxious for this show, and he's our worldly correspondent along with you in Europe there. Scott, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Dean. Thanks.
Quite a fall day here on the island. A little chilly, but once again, coming up Nichols Road to Setauket, just beautiful, beautiful trees.
I want to hear your phone call tomorrow when we tip down to the low 20s with a wind chill of -10. If you now remember how nice it is today.
No, I think it's even going to get lower than that. I think down to 14, 13, I heard.
Well, at night, yes, and the
Right.
wind chills, yes, you're correct.
So listen, why don't you help start this show off with Rhea, with nationalism versus globalism? Where do you want to get started, Scott?
Well, I think Rhea came up with a great subject this week, and it's really part of the body politics in the United States, and of course, definitely in Great Britain with the Brexit, and where people fall on their lines. And I think we're going to be a little surprised as we dig into this, that it doesn't just go to the blue team and the red team. It's not a Democratic thing, and it's not a Republican thing. A lot of it has to do with liberalism, conservatism, patriotism. And I think we're going to learn a lot about the people that support either one, and maybe the administration, like the Trump administration, that is really looking at or campaigned from a nationalistic point of view, but the people that he chose for the cabinet and his lack of ideology, more tactical and more pragmatic, he, in my opinion, he has a combination of the two. So we'll get into that once Rhea starts how she wants to start this subject matter.
Let's go over to Rhea. How do you want to start this, Rhea?
Okay, well, it's kind of, I think, to try and find a cornerstone so people straight away understand where we're coming from. Do either of you two guys relate to one side or the other, or are you in between? Where do you lie with that? Say, Dean.
I'll answer that first. That's a good question, Rhea. I'm pretty much right directly in the middle.
Okay.
Okay, I'm nationalist versus globalist. I'm pretty much in the middle.
Okay, no problem.
How
Where
about
are
you? How about you, Scott?
It's a tough call because I like pieces of both. So I would have to say there are benefits to both sides, and I think we should explore that. I haven't made a decision. I could say that I'm in the middle as well, believe it or not.
Okay.
How about yourself, Rhea?
Me, I'm into sorting out your own backyard, so I would be leaning towards nationalism.
Interesting. I never heard that. Scott, did you ever hear that expression, sorting out your backyard or your own backyard, Rhea?
Yeah, no, I've heard that. It's more of a British line, but I understand what it is. I think she's used that a few times.
So it's a British stick.
Yes, it is.
Okay, I never heard that before.
Well, it's to it's to simplify. So I like to simplify things, as you know, so that works for me, and hopefully it works for other people. Just sort out your own backyard, never mind anybody else until you sort it out, kind of thing. So I'm kind of there, but I'm going to come in with a statement for you guys to get your teeth into, and we can chew the fat on it. Are you ready for this?
Yes, we are.
Here it is. Statement from me. It seems to me that nationalism appears to bring people together, and globalism appears to be tearing the world apart. It's all yours, Scott.
Well, globalism, believe it or not, shares conservative philosophy and liberal philosophy. And I don't think they realize that. For instance, the liberal utopian world would like to have one world order and open up and have multiracial, multi-ethnic communities. And they feel that, there'll be more efficiencies in trade. The problem with globalism is that it has taken the third world countries and brought them into a higher standard of living. That is absolutely the case. But there's a cost to be had. And that cost is the first world societies like Britain and the United States have left behind the middle class. And so what has happened is that the divergence between the rich and the poor has never been more obvious than it is now. So because of globalism, if you have a lot of capital, you could exploit other laborers and take advantage of the comparative wages. So I think the big loser in globalism is the mass middle. That's my feeling about globalism. Nationalism is more isolationist, which is not really a conservative policy, because conservatives seem to be in big business. But when you blend it to a certain segment of the conservative movement, like the alt-right or people that are afraid of losing their identity, then it becomes another thing. And I fear that part is the anti-immigration and the isolationism and fearing their own culture will be destroyed. And I'm not quite sure if and they believe in boundaries in countries, which I do also. I don't believe in a one world order. But if everyone was an isolationist, I'm not quite sure as a whole we'd be better off rather than trading with each other. So I find this a really great topic, very interesting. I'd love to know how you think of that, Ria.
Ria?
Okay, well, I would like to have got your take on it first, Dean. Where are you with it?
Well, listen, there's no question about it that we went through unprecedented times, Ria and Scott, with this election. I mean, we have a president-elect that ran a campaign that echoed such fear and was able to carry a population here in America that finally ran on fear and said, it's enough with the rest of the world. We have to take care of I, and this country. And he won. I mean, that's what the people wanted. So, as I see, America is becoming more towards, a nationalist society. That's the way I see it. People finally said, forget about really the focus of, taking care of the rest of the world, but it's time to take care of ourselves and America.
Well, this is my view about that, Dean. Trump campaigned on, I'm for you, I'm for the middle class, I'm going to bring back jobs, and if I have to introduce tariffs, I will introduce tariffs. If I have to cut off immigration, I'll cut off immigration, all the things they wanted to hear. But if you look at his cabinet selections, it's all transactional, pragmatic, and a little bit of bait and switch. He wanted to drain the swamp, but basically he just took over Goldman Sachs. We got Mnuchin as Secretary of State, Secretary of the Treasury. You have Tillerson, who is the current CEO of ExxonMobil, who has buddied up with Putin, but has also gone into areas like Chad. And there was a deal with three other oil companies. When they went in, they were not going to get that money through arms. They did a pipeline to East Africa. They would provide the drilling. Once they found out the dictatorial government decided that we're going to be corrupt and we're going to do our arms. Well, two of the three left. Well, guess which one stayed? It was ExxonMobil. So they, although they are responsible for their shareholders, they could have said, listen, this is something that's unacceptable. There has to be a moral component to every business. And then finally, when you go to Russia and he wants to be the Secretary of State, the conflicts are unbelievable. If the Congress asked during the confirmation hearings, do you agree that Putin is a thug and a murderer? Do you agree that he indiscriminately butchered and created war crimes in Aleppo? He's not going to be able to unequivocate. He's going to have to say yes or no. And if he waffles, I don't think he's going to be confirmed. So it's interesting. So he has globalists like Tillerson and Mnuchin, and then he has nationalists like Rick Perry, who doesn't even believe in the department he's going to be running, which is the energy department. And then you got an EPA, former Oklahoma Attorney General named Scott Pruitt, that is a denier of global warming. That's not a globalistic viewpoint. That's a nationalistic viewpoint. So it's kind of interesting that he has picked people all over the spectrum. So I'm confused, and this might be off a tangent, Rhea. What is his worldview and his foreign policy?
Hey, Scott,
yeah.
before Rhea pitches in, there's no question about it, these unprecedented times that we had with this campaign. I mean, when you talk about foreign policy, he posed questions that nobody else, no Republican, nobody, even Hillary, posed to raise. Nothing, any of those questions. He posed, why do we need NATO as currently constituted when the Soviet Union no longer exists to threaten Europe? Why should Americans pay for the defense of rich Europeans when they could easily afford to protect themselves? Trump said, why should America continue to pursue a policy of promiscuous regime change when recent history tells us it usually produces a disaster and chaos? He said, why can't the elites recognize and acknowledge the regional mess wrought by the ill-conceived Iraq war? I mean, he just went on and on about foreign policy.
Yeah, and
no one. It was unprecedented.
Yeah.
Nobody ever, no politician ever in history was this aggressive.
Yeah, and you know what? Some of the things I agree with, not going into wars, which Cheney and Bill Gates, by the way, Cheney and Bill Gates and Condoleezza Rice, who's supporting Tillerson, it came out yesterday. Wow, what a revelation. They are actually on the board of Exxon. I mean, the conflicts of interest, there's going to be a new definition in Merriam-Webster's dictionary.
Right.
And so I agree with you.
At the end of the day, you still have half of America buying into him.
They're going to buy into him until they find out that is his interest really jobs in America, or is his interest big business like Exxon and all these multimillionaires making Wall Street rich? Remember, he was against Wall Streeting the whole time. He has raided Wall Street. They're all billionaires. So, you could be smart without being a billionaire. I think it sends the wrong message.
Hey, listen, I've never condoned his whole approach this past year.
I just find it confusing.
I never have. But at the end of the day, he won. And at the end of the day, let's see how he performs.
Oh, absolutely.
That's how I look at it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm not looking, mainstream media. You could turn on CNN, beating up the guy. I mean, it's enough already. At the end of the day, he's the president-elect. He's taking office next month. Let's see how he performs.
The only thing I would say, and I want to go back to Rhea because she came up with the subject, I don't want to take too much time, is that, get off your red and blue jerseys. There's two things. when it's proven by 17 intelligence agencies that Russia did, not maybe, did interfere with the election and did hack. Forget about conflating that with, well, they caused Hillary to win. Okay, you can't prove that. But they don't want to have any kind of narrative out there that the Russians interfered because people say, well, he's illegitimate. No, the fact is that Russia interfered. We have human resources, we have computer forensics, and it's not up to this dispute. And the Republicans right now that are putting on their red jerseys, unlike McCain, Graham, and Rubio, and have real serious problems because they're the hawks against Russia. I think that's abominable.
Wow.
You are an American first, Dean, and then you're a Republican, and that's a problem.
That's powerful, Scott.
Yeah,
very powerful. Why don't we go back over to Rhea? What do you have to say, Rhea?
Oh, it's interesting listening to you. I wasn't going to take such a micro point of view, but I understand because that's what's going on in the US, and that's an understandable thing. Just one point before I say what I was about to say is the fact that you're saying Russia has interfered with that. You need some solid evidence on that, which certainly I haven't seen yet. They may have, they may not have, but I haven't seen anything solid. CIA saying it was them. Then I'm not.
Give Rhea a chance to finish. Go ahead, Rhea.
Oh no, I don't buy it without seeing some.
So Rhea's saying, Scott, she's not buying into this because she has not seen evidence yet proving this. What do you have to say about that?
Okay, there's two parts, and people are conflating it. I have not seen evidence because there's a difference between the CIA and the FBI, whether they purposely did it with intent to sway the election to Trump. I think that's something that we have to investigate, and we cannot come up to a conclusion. But James Clapper, the chief intelligence agent for the United States government, I think October 17th, went in front of Congress in public and said all 17 agencies have agreed beyond any doubt that they have interfered and they have all the proof there is. Now, when you're the CIA, you just can't just send it into the New York Times because you're compromising sources. But there is no one that I know except real partisans that are looking at how it could discredit Trump, which it shouldn't. We should be protecting ourselves. But Rhea, the verdict is out on that they did hack. There is no one credible that is saying that it didn't happen. Everyone is agreeing. I think people are saying, well, did it affect the election? That's another story, but it's out, and I would have to say that.
Rhea, it sounds like our senior correspondent here in America, right here in the Setauket studios, says it's there and there's evidence there. And going over to Europe, our correspondent, Rhea Bowe, differs with him. Anything more on this, Rhea?
Yeah, I didn't want to get too lost in the micro, but yeah, I'm not seeing it the same way as you. I'm fine you see it like that, but I kind of don't. I think you're looking at Russia when you should be looking at the messages that came out. They didn't fire Donna Brazil, Clinton's PA, the Podesta thing. People are focusing on the Russian thing and not focusing on the message a bit. So let's just put it out a bit.
Wow.
No, that's just talking about what they should have done as a result of it. And I agree with you. They could have done other things. That's why I'm not saying that they purposely tried to sway it, which I understand your point. I think what the media and people that follow this wants to break it up.
Rhea, give Scott a chance to finish now.
No, I was just saying that there's 2 points, and you could have point 1 without having point 2. There is pretty much indisputable evidence, okay, forensic, human resources, and one other resource, and I've been really following this, that indeed Russia has their fingerprints on it. They have the evidence, okay? It's indisputable.
Wow.
So
what is disputable? I mean, I haven't seen the evidence, but let's just back out that a second, because it's not going to. We stand apart. That's fine. Okay.
Okay. So let's go on to the.
No, but I like to see this going on here on the show. Scott's got some fire going. I see some smoke coming out of his out of these headphones right now, Rhea.
I do, but I think Rhea wants to go into more of a macro understanding about this, and I appreciate that. So we'll call this one a white flag truce between me and you, Ria, right now. Let's move on to the next
I'm
subject.
sure we're going to see for the rest of our lifetime and beyond plenty of conspiracy theories that are going to be on this subject, right?
I don't think there's a conspiracy theory because it's proven by 17 intelligence agencies. You even have to, it's like global warming, 98% agree. So if you don't agree, you just don't accept science. And that's okay, but it doesn't mean you're right. You think the world is flat and then it was round. That was ignorance. There is global warming. The question is, how much protection are you going to institute because of global warming? So you could say there's global warming, but I think the environmental agencies are going too far. That's a fair point. But I'm hearing people today on the news that are saying there's no global warming. The verdict is out. Well, the verdict isn't out 98%. That's not out. Come on. I mean, you want 100% in life? I don't know. I can't say it's 100% that it's going to be
I agree with
42
you, Scott.
degrees.
I agree with you on that. I agree with
thanks,
you on
Dean.
that.
So, Ria,
Let's go back over to Ria. Go ahead, Ria.
Okay, so let's look at nationalism versus globalism.
Scott, I thought you were going to have some jokes today. So,
that's later on.
Okay.
I think
he's warming up, Ria. Go ahead.
Well, I think she started with this 15 minutes ago, and she's repeating the same thing.
She still hasn't told us what beverage is her choice today, what she's drinking.
It's just the 11 o'clock gin and tonic. We know it already. And a little cigarette in that very fine ashtray. Okay, Ria, please go into the differences and where you're going with it.
Okay, so that's what it was. I wanted to come out the micro, go into the macro, and say historically, nationalism usually goes on the rise when hard times hit the people. That's what history tells us. There's a ton of evidence. If you look back in time, as soon as hard times come on, people they start thinking about themselves more than reaching out. It's more of a kind of inward thing.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it,
Exactly
Ria. I
right.
agree with you 100%.
Me too.
Okay, so moving on with nationalism is often driven from the heart of the people because the people are having a hard time, where I feel globalism is driven by the government and the surrounding corporates around the government. So I wrote down just a few words. This is the only writing that I wrote on it, of what I thought of, my feelings on nationalism versus globalism, and this very simple stuff. So I've put down nationalism equals people, equals not as powerful as the establishment when divided because of fear, but when united are far more powerful, equals being concerned with keeping your own backyard clean and tidy with the priority on the well-being of all of its own people and a fear of loss of sovereignty. So within the nationalism kind of feel, there's a fear in there. So because it's from the people, and almost leading to an aggression because they're not as powerful as the opposing force. My words on globalism equals the establishment, powerful lawmakers with an upper hand, using censorship, mass surveillance that are spying on you, untrustworthy, mass paranoia. Where are the positives of the globalism?
Well, I think there's one thing that you're missing about global. I agree with the nationalist fear. It's fear of losing your identity, and it happens when times are going bad. I completely agree. Globalism, it is about the establishment, but it's very, very interesting. If we take conservative and liberalism out of it and just go with Democratic in the United States, Democrats and Republicans, one would normally word associate that the Republicans are the ones that are more aggressive in these free trade agreements and want to have multinational companies. You would agree on that. So it's kind of a mix because liberalism, which is not necessarily is not the whole of the Democratic Party, they see it one world order where it's multi-racial and multi-ethnic. So I think globalism from a liberal point of view is more social, and globalism from a Republican point of view is more economic. Does that make any sense, Ria?
Kind of, but where's the positives for your people in globalism?
The positives are, I'll tell you the positives. The positives, if you're talking about the people as a whole, there isn't. So there's a level of corruption, I agree. The positives are the people in power, and the revolving door between corporations and the government, and the big financial interests and the big multinational companies that are producing record profits. Stock market is raising, and the rich get richer because they're the ones that can afford this to put capital in the stock market. So what happens with globalism, you get this huge disparity between the rich and the poor. That's really one of the problems with that. And I would also say that with capitalism, with capitalism, people think it's all so good, but there's a price that is not incorporated in capitalism. And that price is, what is it doing to planet Earth and our environment? And if you don't count that cost, we have finite resources and we only have one world. And capitalism by itself is motivated on self-interest, not collaborative effort. So I think you could put all these ideas, economic ideas and philosophical ideas, between capitalism, national, and globalism, and it would be very interesting to see where people fall.
Come on, guys. When you look at both these, when you look at nationalism and you look at globalism, I mean, I look at number one on the list with nationalism is immigration. I mean, protecting the borders. Tremendous fear. It's all about that. When you look at globalism, I mean, and you look at foreign policy and you look at trade, there's tremendous motivation. People that are globalists, that humanitarian impulses that they have, rights and well-being. That's how I look at globalism. But
you don't see greed in globalism. You see humanitarianism.
I see a lot of humanitarianism that falls into globalism in a great bit. How about you, Ria?
Again, the answer to the question, in globalism, you've highlighted a lot of positives for the establishment and the government, and it's driven by the government. Where are the positives for the people in globalism?
Good question.
It's not for the mass. You're right. It's for the ultra wealthy,
so that they're supposed to work for us. We're not supposed to be livestock.
No, you're right. It's not a fair system. And what Trump is trying to do, which I don't understand, is he's trying to lessen the disparity, get jobs back. It's a more of a nationalistic approach. Yet he's bringing into the cabinet people that are completely disagreeable and
okay.
Right. For this nationalistic policy, you have, Tillerson, you got Mnuchin.
Yeah, no, let's not do the guys. Let's look at the concept of what we're talking about as opposed to people. The people do have a history, but what's going to happen, I don't exactly know. But again, so can you bring up any positives for the people out of globalism?
I mean, that's a good question, Ria's got. Can you, Scott?
The only thing I can think of is very shallow, that we could get goods and services at a cheaper price.
Right. Okay. Cheap crap. Okay. So so therefore, if you can't find any positives other than buying cheap crap, why are you leaning 50-50 with globalism?
Because I think from a social point of view, not an economic point of view, I like the social point of view where we embrace multiculturalism. And I think when we're together and putting different mindsets together, we expand as a people rather than putting fences around us. I just have a firm belief about that.
So that's a potential, not an actual, isn't it?
I don't know if it's a potential. You go to New York City. I was speaking to someone who was British yesterday, who's in a global headhunting company. He's a CEO. Very, very fascinated with him. And I don't think that's a theory. When you walk in New York City, I'll see a hijab, I'll see an African American, an Asian, whatever. No one blinks an eye because we're accustomed to it. But if you go to Oklahoma, you only hear about that, and then you form certain opinions. And I think the combination of all cultures, just like I'm involved in Vistage, the disparate ideas that you get from listening to other people creates a better awareness. So I think there's a social aspect of it that's positive. Maybe not an economic. I'll agree with you, but I think there's a social aspect that's economic.
Whatever the
Okay.
case,
I mean,
whatever the case is,
that makes sense. That helps.
whatever the case is, there's a huge split here in this country,
Yeah, I think
like we've never seen before.
I think it's complicated,
It's very complicated,
and I think Trump is playing the middle. He's going nationalistic on his campaign, but his policies and his cabinet picks are very globalistic in many areas. Do you agree with that, Ria? Have you been following his cabinet picks?
Yeah, no, I have been following them. Some, I don't really want to get tucked into their history too much until they perform. The only thing I would made a judgment of in my own mind was, again, is going to take us straight into Trump. And the idea was to discuss the concepts of nationalism and globalism as opposed to the inner workings of the government, which I know you love, Scott, which is kind of fine. But in total, it was the concept of each one and who benefits who. So the thing I'd say, when you said about the social benefits, which you feel are real, which I believe I heard you say,
Yes.
is I think to reach out and invite people in is a good thing. But is what you need is you need the infrastructure to support that kind of movement. So just to let people in and possibly not have the infrastructure to support represents a problem. So with the nationalism thing, it doesn't mean keep everybody out, which assuming by what you said it implies. It means, have we got the infrastructure to accept this wealth of people coming in? And you look at the mechanics of the social infrastructure, economic infrastructure, to see if it supports 500,000 coming in, because it may well not. You have an infrastructure problem anyway, like we do, and that needs to be looked at. So it's not about keeping people out. It's not just about just letting them in without having a look at infrastructure and see the impact it has on the locals.
That's an excellent point, Ria. I don't believe in open borders. I believe in an orderly fashion that could be controllable, but not to discriminate. And then when they come here, they're able to live and function in a society that's not cannibalizing the infrastructure that we have there. They're able to use it and able to build on it. So I think I agree with you on that part.
I mean, there's just over the past 2 years, there's just a huge fear on safety here in this country and terrorism. People have had it. I mean, they've just had it, and they bought into Trump. This whole border control is number one.
But see, Dean, I think that's the dirty, dark side of nationalism. I believe in nationalism in a lot of ways, but I don't like that part. That's the fringe. That's the alt-right, and there's a level of bigotry there. I don't subscribe to that part of it. I can understand the other part. People are fear of losing their identity, cheaper labor coming in. I could understand that, having closed borders. I could get that. When you get to the alt-right and the white national supremacists, that's where I draw the line.
What's the political climate on, would you say, in Europe, the UK, Ria, in regard to how split nationalism versus globalism?
Oh, it's rather than just look at well, I'll answer your question. Obviously, we were in a similar position to you, weren't you? It's kind of nearly split down the middle. And again, as hard times have come along, I mean, it should have crashed in 2008. They made some serious measures for the economic system not to crash. So we're owed a whopper, and there's no getting away from it. We're all watching the bond markets, and the bond markets tell all. Never mind what the politicians say, because I don't trust them. But you can look at the bond market, and the bond market is definitely starting to tell a story. But this nationalistic feel, as the world goes into this contraction, nationalism historically would rise. I mean, we're seeing it in the UK, you're watching it in Italy, France, Holland,
Philippines.
Japan, Philippines. It's all over the place. So it's not like a US-UK phenomenon. It's classic history that as times come upon and they're difficult, people start to think, well, what about us? You're letting all these people in. But what about the people that are already here? So it's a pretty, although on one hand a complex thing, the driving force behind it isn't complex at all. So It's not a miracle. So it's not a US phenomenon at all. Watch Europe in the next year. The European Union has got their work cut out for the next year, I can tell you. So just eyes on Europe and watch what happens, because it's not looking so rosy at the moment as it sort of starts to
But
splinter.
Rhea, I'll bet you that this administration ends up being closer with the European administration more than we've ever seen in the history of any presidential administration. Very close with Europe.
I appreciate. I see that as a classical point of view, but it's what is slowly occurring to Europeans. Is a point that was brought up earlier in the program, where you've got NATO and the US, and people see this NATO and the US as the same thing, as all surrounding Russia. Well, while you're on the west coast of Russia and the east coast of Europe, it destabilizes Europe as well as Western Russia. So that relationship, I think, on the banking side of things, they're best buds, no doubt about it. But a lot of those bankers, people consider the shadow government and the deep state, whereas people are starting to dawn, wait a minute, while all those missiles, so-called defense missiles, are on that coast, and there's a lot of them, Europe isn't particularly stable at all, and they're looking to stabilize Europe. So on one hand, classically, I think you're right, Dean, but on the other hand, as it starts to dawn that the European Union can't settle Europe down while all those missiles are on the coast, and they're now talking about building fresh links with Russia to get those missiles removed to stabilize the thing again. So I think there's a case for both sides, Dean, no doubt about it. Right, we're 40 minutes in, guys. Can we wrap this up and then get on to the news, because there's some participation for you guys.
Sounds good. Let's get started, Rhea. Let's bring this to a close.
Okay, so Scott, do you want to close?
No, I have some interesting thoughts that have nothing to do with this, so I like to hear your news stories. I got a few news stories also that might be out of the mainstream media.
Rhea, it's up to you. Do you want to get started with your news close, or do you want Scott to wait, or get into what he has to say?
Well, I don't mind. I've got a few articles here that I think will be of interest. One particular belter on the end, as I like to put on the end. But some are just outright news, and some I'll ask you for feedback. So either way you want to play it.
So what I'd like to do is, why don't you do the news? I'll put one or 2 points in. You have something funny at the end. And
Scott, I want to hear something funny from you, Scott, today.
But I want to wait until I have some ammunition on Rhea.
Okay.
So I'm strategically doing this towards the end of this.
Okay.
Okay. So what, Rhea? Let's do.
I need a little humor from both of you guys. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, Rhea, go.
Well, I get the humor thing. We can do a humor thing, but
yeah, it's going to be quick. It's going to be a minute.
Yeah. Okay. So we're just going to go. So some online news headlines I'll go into first. Just a quick one. As you know, we're surrounded by fake news, and there's a lot of talk just for the last week or two. Online journalists are talking about new people or organizations that are anonymous appearing online, creating obviously absurd news for the mainstream to point at and say, look, mainstream news basically is to discredit. But these people have just turned up out the blue. No one knows who they are. And that's some of the stuff that you're getting that the mainstream are reporting on. So that's a bit of a movement. Moving on from there, the Washington Post distanced itself from the propaganda list that it published. I'm sure you saw the prop or not prop article. And when it was questioned, because everybody's looking out for fake news, they distanced themselves really quickly and went, oh, actually, it's nothing to do with us. Well, actually, it is. You published it. So you have to carry some of the weight of that can, as it were. But it turned out that it was not authentic. There was no real sort of evidence behind it. So that was a Washington Post kind of thing. Some that nobody's really talking about is there was a big techno geek meeting, the programmers in the world of the programs that we use on our computers. I love the techno geeks. They're so cool. And there's a movement beginning where they're talking about a passive user, they call it. A passive user being someone that uses a computer they're not that au fait with it, but they do emails and they do a bit of browsing, but they're not really, that's the extent of it. And a lot of people are in that position. Well, they get called passive users by the programmers. And is what the programmers are now really aware of are that those passive users are victims of their information shooting out the window. They're being spied on. They're completely unaware of it. Well, perhaps not completely because of Snowden, but that they're unaware. So they're trying to build an open source software to protect the user and educate the user that fits on top of the likes of Windows 10.
Interesting.
So,
Very
Interesting. That's very interesting.
But more to the point, it's a people's movement. There's no funding. It's these techno geeks can obviously see stuff that we can't see, and they feel that people are just being duped, and they need some kind of security from their own people, if you like. So nobody's really talking about that, but that is definitely getting up ahead of steam. Right, the next article, I'll ask you for some feedback. Here we go. The NDAA, the National Defence Authorization Act. Okay. There's been a new part added on the back end of the National Defence Authorization Act, and it is a department called the Global Engagement Centre, which is led by the State Department. This has gone through the House, gone through Senate, and it just needs President Obama's signature on it. And they are 100% expecting him to sign it pretty damn soon. And is what this means is the Global Engagement Centre are to train and employ people to go on the net and identify what they deem people should see and what they shouldn't see. So as soon as Obama signs that off, you're going to have your very own Ministry of Truth, George Orwell style. I never thought I'd see it in my own lifetime, but it turns out you're going to have your very own one. So look out if you're going to do any kind of critique or question anything that the government puts forward, because it's attached to the National Defence Authority Act, the punishment could be harsh.
Wow.
Rhea,
Wow.
that's very interesting. In my opinion, I don't know how that will pass the Supreme Court with the First Amendment right. I just do not. This is more North Korean to me. I can't imagine.
Scott, it's already done. It's already gone through. It just needs Obama's signature.
No. A law can be unconstitutional. So what I think is going to happen is, you're right, they'll sign the law. It'll go to court within 24 hours. It'll go to the appeals. It'll go all the way to the Supreme Court. And I think at the end of the day, the Supreme Court will disregard that law. I think it flies in the face of the First Amendment.
And that's fine. But that's what's going on.
Yeah, it's disturbing. I agree with you.
Right, so I've got people on the ground. As soon as that gets signed, I'll know about it. That's as simple as that. So we're watching this like hawks to see if he puts his signature on that. And in turn, what's the knock-on effect of that is when a president is outgoing, he doesn't usually expand the transition team. Well, Obama expanded the transition team big time. And now we're starting to see all these law changes coming in, and this is one of them. So keep your eyes on that. So you've said your bit, Scott, on it. That's outrageous. Where are you with it, Dean?
Scott, would you say that our senior correspondent over there in Europe is looking forward to our current president departing?
She's gonna have a whole lot of fun. I gotta be invited to the party. I'll give you my address later on.
I never heard of that act before. Rhea, is it called the National Defense Authorization Act?
Yeah, the overall act is NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act.
It's amazing how you know all this. It's really remarkable.
There's two things I wanted to get to. They're not really the news stories. Something about Israel. There was a thing on 60 Minutes how they have now reached out to so many countries. They've never been more beloved. I know there's a boycott going on in some European countries, especially Sweden. But they are now reaching out. They're reaching out to China, Russia. But more interestingly, Benjamin Netanyahu flew yesterday to Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan. Azerbaijan is primarily Shiite and Kazakhstan is primarily Sunni. And currently they get a lot of oil there. And what the trade is, Israel is, if not the first, the second most technological country in the world right now. They're developing everything, one of the correspondents said, "Okay, what's your relationship with Jordan? Good. What's your relationship with Egypt? Good. So forth. What about Saudi Arabia? No comment." And then he gave a wink and a nod. Says, things that we speak about. How about the Arab states, the Gulf states? And he said, you're going to see this new alliance because of Iran. I found it interesting. And then another thing, I was concerned about Trump's policy towards Israel. And we all know that Obama and Netanyahu got together like oil and vinegar. But he's already made a statement, just like he's made a statement to agitate China. He's already come out, I think a day or two ago, to say, we are going to move the embassy to Jerusalem. That is a major development if that happens.
Wow.
News on that.
Did you hear that the administration that's coming in is having a very difficult time getting top tier entertainment to come to play at the inauguration? Did you hear that?
Yes, but I thought they got maybe Kanye West to do it.
No, I think they're getting Andre Bocelli.
He's trying to get that. He loves Andre.
Bocelli.
Yes.
But you saw those two big meetings that took place the last 2 days with Kanye West and Bill Gates as well. There's a big summit today.
I saw Bill Gates.
Interesting. I mean, someone came out. I don't know if it was Bill Gates or someone else in the news yesterday that said that compared Trump is going to be the next JFK.
I heard something about the JFK. I don't know who said that.
who said that.
Someone did say that, and I read it. I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Do you know if, Rhea, Theresa May is coming in from Europe to attend the inauguration?
I wouldn't have. Well, I don't know.
Just so you know, there's going to still be a million woman march. And they're not, Trump says it could still go on during the inauguration. That is not going to be.
Wow.
Watch the protests that are going on. It's interesting. Another thing I was thinking about, it's just my odd way of thinking, I was speaking to a lot of business people this week, and, there's these little things that we say that are really like, oh, God. It's like, let's say, let me give you an example. You're working for someone, you go to see the boss, the boss says, listen, Jim, you're really committed to your work. You come in on time, everything is admirable, but we're going to have to let you go. We need to make some cuts. That dreaded but. And there's a more elongated part of the but that I don't think people realize. It's a little bit more subtle, a little bit more insidious. It's the having said that, which I love. So you'd say something like, let's say you present a manuscript to a publisher, and the publisher looks at it, and you're sitting across the table, and the publisher says, I read the book. I got to tell you, it was brilliant and comprehensive. Now the person's saying, oh my God, this is going to be great. And they go, having said that, I think it's too long and it'll sit on the shelf. So the having said that takes away everything from what you did before. And it's another way of doing the dreaded but. Have you ever thought about that?
Wow. Rhea, what do you think of that, what Scott said?
Yeah, no, I'm on to, well, if you've done any sales training and all that kind of thing, it's in there, isn't it?
I think the but is in there. Don't do the but, say and. But I don't think people really explore that. The dreaded having said that. It takes away everything you just said. Like, I love you, I want to marry you. Having said that, I already have 3 kids and I'm moving to Bangladesh. What does that mean?
Yeah, I never did it. I never did any sales training, so I was always self-taught, so I never did any sales training.
Don't say having said that.
Scott, Rhea, do you have anything else today before Scott has a chance to say the things that he wanted to say?
I've got a few more stories yet. I was still going through them.
Sure, please.
Okay, news in from the EU. This is EU News. Let's see if you've heard this. I bet you haven't. Right, here we go. Members of the German government have just passed a resolution to ban the sale of all internal combustion vehicles by 2030.
Wow. I heard it, Rhea.
Wow.
I heard it.
That's big. I mean, what do you do with that? I mean, brum, brum, those days are kind of going to come to an end, right? And moving on, unless you've got anything else to say. No.
It could be challenging for Scott to be driving in from his commute from Long Island City to Setauket, Long Island.
Right, but here's something very positive. I just heard within the next 6 to 7 years, they won't make cars for drivers. It'll all be driverless cars. And and there'll be Ubers and taxis. So people are saying, well, that's going to kill the auto industry. In fact, it's completely the opposite. What's going to happen is they're going to make so many cars, and now they're going to have an expanded market, 16-year-olds and younger. Mommy, I want to go to the shopping mall. The driverless car. Someone who's 75 or 80 and older that is not capable with their vision.
Wow.
It's. I think that's fascinating. So
Amazing.
yeah, technology is changing. But yeah.
Fascinating
So
stuff.
I heard about that thing in Germany because I've been reading about that. So these are changes. What else, Ria?
Okay, moving on to Hawaii. News from Hawaii. 7 species of the yellow-faced bee are placed on the endangered list close to extinction. For those who are not aware of bees, there are little angels. They pollinate and they're fundamental to the ecosystem.
Mm.
For those who don't know, Hawaii was the test bed for GM foods. They wanted to see what happens. There's bad things happening in Hawaii with birth defects and things. They're saying that the bees have been killed due to insecticides produced by Monsanto and Bayer, okay, who are doing their test bed program. A little bit on Monsanto. Monsanto was responsible for making Agent Orange in Vietnam, and they've just coupled up with Bayer, who started life as IG Farben, who produced the gas for the gas chambers in Auschwitz and Birkenau. Their insecticides are killing the bees. But don't worry, they're not going to stop doing Roundup and insecticides. They're going to start building robo-bees instead.
Oh, God.
Wow. She really, Ria really has got a love and passion for GM foods, huh?
Yeah, she's on a kick with the GM
She's
foods.
definitely.
But you know what? I have a person who's one of my trainers, and he has beehives, and the amount of bees in the beehives are down 50%. And she's correct. Without bees, we don't have an ecosystem. They pollinate and they do everything. Wow. One thing I just was confused. I thought Agent Orange was like a type of shampoo. Are you saying that's a poison?
That is a joke that would work in the US, but not in Vietnam.
Oh, yeah, yes. You got to know the place and timing, just like any comic.
I guess Ria's lost that opportunity to come onto the board of Monsanto, huh?
No. She wouldn't even get a visitor's pass.
That Ria's a tough one, huh?
You couldn't drag me there, honestly. Right, okay, moving on. News on Israel, as you brought it up, Scott.
Yep.
The Interior Minister for Israel, as reported in the Jerusalem Post, this is a week old or so, but this is a weekly program. They are talking of rolling out full biometrics for all citizens. So full facial recognition, handprints, gestures, the whole 9 yards. So that's quite big news in Jerusalem, which I realise is could be quite close to your guys' hearts. Any feedback?
Scott, on that one?
So every citizen is going to have to go to a station and give all this information to the government so they could make sure they're authenticated?
Yep.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, you know what? With Israel, it's not like America. They have an existential threat. They have enemies on their border. And, they have to give up some of their rights for protection. I have no problem with that.
Okay. Let's, the show's coming to a close here. Let's start to finish up here. Ria,
okay,
what else do you have?
I'm going to whiz through these then because these are quite good. Former NSA director, National Security Agency, Keith Alexander said, "I hear that people are leaving in large numbers from the NSA. I think it's down to a number of things like low morale and more money on the outside." A quick one on the US-Syria relationship. It was winding down, but here's a clip about a waiver that Obama's just done. Here's an audio clip.
Good evening, friends. We start tonight with the latest developments in Syria. President Obama signed a waiver on Thursday lifting restrictions of weapon supplies to rebel groups in that country. It's not the first time he's done so, but the timing has become a hot topic for debate. He made the decision in his last month of his presidency, and it comes as rebels retreat from East Aleppo.
it looks like President Obama is even loosening the standards for putting weapons into the hands of people that we don't even pretend are vetted moderates, like that fiasco with those 4 or 5 fighters that they were able to produce some months back. Now we're talking about throwing weapons out there like Christmas cookies to people that we know are terrorists.
Commenting on the decision, the U.S. State Department said that any assistance given to the rebels is carefully monitored, but they can't guarantee that their weapons won't eventually change hands.
Any feedback?
Yes, that's awful. First of all, if Obama was going to do that, they were going to do it when the rebels had took ground in Aleppo and other areas. Right now, they're decimated. There's war crimes being perpetrated on the Syrian population in Aleppo. Why is he doing it now when there's hardly any rebels left? I mean, this seems backwards. What do you think?
Sounds like there's a lot of things he's getting done over these next couple of weeks before he's.
But there's no one to
out.
give it to. It's like like people at a bar mitzvah. What are they gonna have, like 175 people they give it to?
Right.
Where was it when they had 500,000? I'm against that. Sorry.
Wow.
Okay, and moving on. Okay, so I've still got more to go, and I've still got to get to my N1. So don't close it too soon, Dean, because the N1's quite.
We're not going to pull the plug.
You've got it.
If you need an extra few minutes, we'll
if you want to take a break and get another cocktail, Rhea, go right ahead.
Please. Yeah.
I've already done it.
Oh.
Okay, so as you know, I've been following the 9.3 trillion missing.
Oh yeah.
We've been following the story. It's a pretty big thing, although nobody's really talking about it that much. I contacted Catherine Austin Fitz, who's exceedingly well, ex-government and well-connected. And the message I got back, a brief email saying there has been no inroads made into that money being missing.
And you reached Catherine?
I did, yeah.
Wow, powerful.
That's amazing.
Amazing, Rhea.
Okay, so moving on to my last but not least story. This is not current, but right, just stick with me because this is quite interesting. I was following a story about the Antarctic, as Dean knows, and it kind of went cool, but there's a lot of activity down there at the moment. And it turned out up pops a story, although it was off topic, but Buzz Aldrin from the moon landing in 1969 gets rushed out of Antarctica because he's had a wobble. They rush him to Christchurch to see if he's okay. Well, he's okay, but the question was, what is Buzz Aldrin doing in the Antarctic? Because he's not the youngest person in the world. So from there, I come across something really interesting and really fascinating about the 1969 moon landing. I'm going to show you guys, which I'm just about to seize control of one of your computers, and show you a picture, okay? So just have a look at this picture, guys, and tell people what you can see. Look at the screen at your end. Mm-hmm. What do you see?
Scott, what do you see?
I see a lunar landing module.
That's what I see.
Exactly. So people, we're looking at the lunar lander on the moon's surface. So I would like to, and you could do this at home, if you want to type in lunar landing module, you'll see a picture very similar to what we were looking at. Okay.
And what date and time was that picture taken? What year?
Oh, this would have been from 69.
69, okay.
Rhea, I also see some sort of banner on the right-hand side. I don't know what that's about.
That was part of it. It will make sense in a minute.
Okay.
Scott, whenever I hear 1969, what comes to mind right away? The Miracle Mets and
Miracle Mets and the Woodside.
and the Super Bowl, right?
Woodstock.
Joe Namath.
Yes.
Super Bowl.
It was a great day, a great year in New York.
Go ahead, Rhea.
Okay, let me draw your attention to the bottom right-hand corner, which are some footsteps. Can you see them on the ground?
I see them.
Yes, I do.
Are those your footsteps, Rhea?
They're not all good at
okay,
this point.
Okay.
But those footsteps are of an astronaut, i.e. could have been Buzz Aldrin, probably was, of him walking on the moon. So that's the impression he made on there.
Wow.
With 83% less gravity on the moon. Yeah?
Wow.
Okay.
Let me draw your attention to the underneath of the moon lander. Can you see it here?
Yes.
That is the rocket engine. How far would you say that rocket engine is above the ground?
I would say I would go 4 feet.
Yeah, I would say 3-4 feet.
Okay, so if a person can make these kind of footprints, yeah, why is there not scorched earth and a massive crater below that rocket engine?
Wow, good question.
So the rocket engine is like a reverse thruster that slows the landing?
They've come down to land on the moon. That rocket engine is 10,000 pounds of thrust comes out of there to land it.
Rhea, no, what I'm saying is it a reverse thruster to slow the landing so it has a gentle stop?
It's 10,000 pound thruster.
Right, but the thrust may be going upward, not downward.
Oh, no. So you think of it landing on the moon.
Okay.
Think of it landing on the moon?
Yes.
Right, okay. So anyway, so I found some audio that I'd like you to have a listen to by a guy named Bill Casing, an ex-Rocket Don employee. He's kind of like
Rhea,
a rocket man.
Before you put that on, can you tell our listening audience again how they could view this picture we're looking at?
Oh, just type in any search engine lunar landing module.
Lunar landing module. Just type that in. Okay.
Simple as that. Have a listen to this short part that I've chopped out of an interview with Bill Casing, ex-Rocket Don employee. Have a listen to this.
And when the module set down on the surface of the moon, the amount of propulsion that would have been required to do that, and it leaves no cloud of dust, no crater.
Right. Having seen hundreds of rocket firings when I was employed by Rocketdyne, I know that the jet of the lunar module lander, the lunar lander, would have created an enormous crater. It would have scoured the moon's surface. It would have tossed up rocks, sand, everything, and created a crater maybe so large that the entire lunar lander could have sunk into it. After all, we're dealing with a 10,000 pound thrust engine, which is pointed directly at the surface, lowered into the surface, and yet if you look at pictures of the lunar lander on the moon, there is no disturbance whatsoever under the lunar lander's rocket.
Any feedback?
Well, if the plan was that it was so powerful that it would create a crater, then by definition, it would have also taken the legs with it and crashed. So they must have thought about this because it landed perfectly. So you couldn't do what it was supposed to do, or else you wouldn't have a successful lunar landing, right?
When you look at the visual of this picture, Scott, that Rhea's showing us, I mean, it looks like a perfect landing.
Yes, it does.
Perfect.
So where's the scorched earth? Where's everything? Look what the footprints did to the earth. Why didn't the rocket have a massive crater below it? Whereas, I mean, 10,000 pound of thrust. That's a lot. That's
very
like
very powerful.
So what is your thought process?
Where are you going with this, Rhea?
I'm going. If we had a NASA engineer in here right now, how do you think he would explain that?
I'm not an engineer. I have no idea. But are you suggesting that is a fake picture imposed on the moon?
I don't know, but something doesn't add up, does it?
Not to the layperson, but I guess we would have to speak to a NASA engineer to say what's missing, right?
Yep.
Yeah, like a big crater with scorched earth when there looks to be no apparent. You can't see where the rocket is ignited to land.
Can I ask a stupid question? Is there any chance that there was a crater and the astronauts came out with a few shovels and shoveled the dirt back in?
It's possibility, right? So in doing that, I thought the only way they could sort of say, no, you've got it wrong, is by saying it's not a real picture. I thought that's the only way they could explain themselves out of it, kind of thing. So I wanted to show you another quick picture of the original picture that was in the National Geographic in 1969, which you can now see. And again, it's a bit blurry. It's oldie worldy, black and whitey. But again, there's no it should be a massive crater below, by my reckoning, underneath that lunar lander. So I found it absolutely fascinating.
So what Rhea's saying is this was staged and it was done in Hollywood in the studio. We never went to the moon.
What I'm saying is I would like to hear what NASA had to say as to why there's not loads of scarring and a big crater below the lunar lander.
You know what? I could do that. Is there a place that I could send feedback to NASA to ask the question?
I'm sure you know people, Scott.
Of course, you give me way too much credit. I will actually look into it to see if there's a question and answer.
It sounds like the timing of this happened with Rhea right around the time the Senator John Glenn passed away this week.
Yeah, did that give you inspiration to look into this, or was it just happen chance?
No, I was tracking a story in Antarctic, and up come Buzz Aldrin. What's he doing there? Started to look
I'll tell you one thing: Buzz Aldrin being in Antarctica, he's no youngster today. I don't know what his age is, but he's up there.
Hopefully, he had a nice goose down blanket and a hot cup of tea. Why would you want to go there?
It's a good question. I'll bring up the Antarctic story another day, but I thought it was fascinating as to why that is looking like it does. But at the end of the day, guys, if I've got it wrong, I'll put my hands up and I'll blame Russia.
I think this was a great episode.
Is that it on your end, Rhea?
That's it, sweetie. That's it. Me done.
Thank you very much. I love that. She's gone from darling to sweetie.
I haven't had any of those superlatives words.
You
to
never
me
get
yet.
those words.
Nothing.
Only the host of the show gets those superlatives.
Exactly. Actually, when you start the introduction, we have the senior correspondent Scott Morell, and from the UK, the beautiful, talented, educational, and unbelievable voice of Rhea Bowe. I don't take offense.
Scott, is that your humor for the closing out the show? I know that you had some things that you wanted to.
No, actually,
you wanted to say.
Actually, that was gnawing at me. It's a reminder for the next introduction, Dean.
You know what? I'm glad you're laughing right now, Scott, because earlier today you weren't laughing when you walked into the studio. We had one of those days coming out to the studio in the life of Scott Morell.
Yes.
We won't get into it. We won't share it with the audience. But it was one of those days for me again.
But did I recoup very well?
Yes, you did.
Thank you.
Yes, you did.
Okay.
You had some things that you wanted to close the show, do you?
No, it was just about the having said that and but.
No jokes, some humor? No?
Well, that was supposed to be a joke. I don't know if anyone laughed.
Okay.
Rhea,
anything else on your end?
No, I'm kind of done. There were some interesting bits and pieces that I came across, and I thought they may be of interest to people.
Rhea, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show today, and now closing with the fabulous and the great senior correspondent here in the studio, Scott Morell. I want to say, to everyone, please, the audience, please like us on Facebook. Don't forget to like us and to subscribe to the show's YouTube channel. If you'd like to leave a comment, use the box below. All prior shows are now on iTunes. If you would like to share your story, any ideas, or be a guest on the show, go to thedeanbleckman.com and email me directly. You can do dean@deanbleckman.com. I would like to thank all my listeners for being with us today. From all of us at The Dean Bleckman Show, have a great day.
You've been listening to The Dean Bleckman Show, live from Long Island, New York. From all of us here, we'd like to thank you for tuning in. We look forward to hearing your comments via Facebook, Twitter, Skype, and email. And don't forget, you can visit the webpage anytime for the up-and-coming guest list. From all of us here, have a good evening.